Johan, I want to go back to you at this point, please. Would you give us an indication of how South Africa fares when it comes to incidents of police brutality compared to perhaps our neighboring African countries or even the world? Do we have an unusually high set of cases of police brutality?
Well, it's difficult to make comparisons. Certainly, I don't have the stats to do that kind of comparison. If you look across Africa, then we know that it's endemic in many African countries, but we simply don't know what the numbers are because they don't make them public. They don't publish their crime statistics, and they don't publish any of the information in terms of cases, including cases of police brutality against police agencies in African countries. If we look at what's happening in Europe and in America, for example, we know that in the United States it is a huge problem. We know from so many cases that are publicized, and you know, there's a new development in the United States. It's in existence for about 2-3 years now. It's called CopWatch, where you have organized groups of civilians who follow the police everywhere and who takes photographs, video footages of every aspect of police activity. And it's causing tension amongst the police and the public, of course, because not everything the police do is unlawful. And the police feels that this is interfering with their lawful activities as well. But this is something that is spreading to other countries. We've seen it developing in, for example, Australia and in some countries in Europe. And although it's not yet as organized in this country as in most of those countries, I think it's a question of time that it will become more organized here as well.
Bram, I'd like to go back to you at this point. Many of our users, when we indicated that this is the topic we were going to be talking about, said that many said that they don't feel they live in a police state, but they're fearful that the police use too much force. Here in the Western Cape, just last week, we saw police using force against school children who were protesting outside the Western Cape Education Department. Now, where do we draw the line in situations like this? In fact, one of our viewers, Noxie, asked us, where do you draw the line? When do you decide it is appropriate for the police to use force? It's not an easy question to answer.
Well, I think that we need a police force or service, and I think the police need to decide whether they're a police service or a police force. I think the public is a bit confused because there was a transition from the police service to the police force. The new Minister Nathi has indicated a move or a shift back to referring it as to a service. A different strategy, a different approach. But it's very difficult. I mean, one of the tweets that Nokolo raised was complaining about police brutality and police thugs. In the same tweet, it was complaining about crime, murder and rape. How do we get a police that are able to stand up to violent criminals, that have the confidence and the faith from communities and the mandate of the South African government to ensure that criminals are captured and held accountable for their criminal acts, and at the same time make sure that they're not unaccountable and not too brutal and not too violent. There are some obvious examples like what happened with the taxi driver. There are obvious examples like what happened with school kids. There are obvious examples of an absolute abuse of power by community policing forums or police, like the sort of Dom pass we saw in Worcester last week. There's obvious examples of really malicious, nasty, violent behavior. The number of people who die in detention in South Africa is very high. These are very unfortunate, unacceptable and disturbing features of our South African police force. But at the same time, we also have an extremely high level of crime, violence and brutality within our communities. So the police need to they need to pass a new direction into how the police are going to relate to communities, how they're going to channel their energies into holding accountable criminals. To answer your question, put shortly, I don't think police should ever be using violence. I think that the role of police is to detain people who break the law. If somebody is violent towards a policeman isn't meant to retaliate and beat back. A policeman is then meant to call it an assault and detain somebody and hold them accountable for assaulting them. The police shouldn't be actively, violently attacking people. However, when it comes to public policing and where there's a decision that a group needs to be dispersed, that becomes another complicated dynamic, and I don't think the police in South Africa have a very clear strategy as to how to manage public gatherings that don't meet the legal requirements, and sometimes the legal requirements themselves seem to be selectively implemented. So we need to look at it in that light.
Johan, I want to go back to you with this because Bram is raising a very important point, and one certainly that many South Africans have spoken about, and that's police systems, because we certainly see that our different police commissioners and even ministers of police bring with them different styles of policing. Can you talk to us a little bit more about this? Does South Africa need to define its style of policing and stick to it? Is that something that should be done or is accepted to be done internationally?
Well, let me just begin by saying, the sound from the stereo is terrible, but I think I've got the gist of your question. And if we look at why we have this situation where we are experiencing such high levels of police brutality, then of course we have to look at a number of possible reasons, including policing styles and so on. But you have to start with what we refer to as systemic problems within the police service. And these so-called systemic problems are also identified in the National Development Plan, very, very, very clearly. And we agree with these. And this has to do, on the one hand, with command and control issues in the police service. It has to do with the quality of staff in the police service. Now, we know that there are many, many good and very efficient officials in the South African police service, but unfortunately, also during this decade, when we saw this huge increase in police brutality, we saw a huge increase in the levels of police expansion from about 100,000 sworn officers, operational officers, to about 155,000 at the moment. The problem with that was that both the previous Minister of Police and Bheki Cele, when he was National Commissioner of Police, acknowledged that in the process of rapid expansion, they forfeited quality in favor of quantity. So people were allowed into the police service who did not meet the minimum requirements for enlistment into the police service. So all of these things contributed to a situation where the police are now struggling with many of its staff that should not have been there in the first place. And then I agree with your other panelists there that I think, you add all of this, the high levels of crime and pressures on the police to deal with crime more effectively. There's pressures politically, there's pressures from the public, the media, from everywhere. There's pressures on the police. Then there's attacks on the police. 77 police officers killed last year, many more wounded and injured. So policemen themselves, I think, go out into the streets and they see every other member of the public as a potential opponent, but also in instances as a dangerous opponent. So it becomes an us and them sort of situation. And then the police are expected to deal with issues of public violence through public order police units. And this is almost always a confrontational situation. And the police have to deal with protesting crowds who are complaining or protesting about issues that the police have no control over, but they represent. And so the anger that we often see amongst these protesting groups are then directed at the police. And very often we see situations where police do not show the kind of levels of tolerance that we expect from a professional police service. And then they react in kind, and this then develops into a violent confrontation between the police and communities. Now, just considering the whole idea of police-community relations, community police forums, the whole idea of partnership policing, we are destroying that kind of potential for cooperation between the police and communities if we have this ongoing confrontational situations that the police are expected to deal with. So you put all of these conditions together, you have a recipe for police brutality and police violence.